dark areas of the picture, wherever this sits over top of. Where it says difference, it's kind of like a photo negative, where you get the opposite color of what you're using. So the opposite of red is going to be kind of the cyan green going on here. So that's the opposite color. So that's what I get that's being applied. Whereas, exclusion and subtract and divide do things a little different with it, but you get the same idea. Hue means color. So hue, saturation, color, and luminosity is dealing with the color value that I'm using and applying it to the area. So if you want to colorize something, you have that. So those are different categories for all these, but actual use and then stacking those uses up can get you different things. So for instance, I can use, I'll say the difference blend mode on this red, but then when I go to the blue layer, I can change it to something completely different and I get a different overall look. And then I can go even further and go to this background copy and change the blend mode on that. And that's going to change up how this looks for the whole picture. Depending on which blend mode I pick, depends on what happens. And why am I doing that? Because you feel like it, or you're following a tutorial that tells you to do this and apply it this way to get this particular results and effect, because that's what they're trying to aim for you to get with that particular tutorial. But don't just go to the tutorial, do exactly what they're telling you to do, and not explore why they're having you do it. Well, what is happening when I apply this blend mode? What's going on? Sometimes the tutorial will explain and sometimes they won't. They'll just say do it. And you're like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm just going to do it. And you get something that happens. If anybody that cooks by recipe, you follow the recipe, you get exactly what they want you to make. But if you change the recipe a little bit, you don't use a different ingredient, use a different amount in the ingredient. Don't apply the ingredients in the correct order. Something different happens. Sometimes bad, sometimes good. Sometimes you get exactly the same thing, even though you change things around. That's how you learn, especially in something like Photoshop. Just because the tutorial tells you to do it this way, do it based on that tutorial or the directions that you're given, but then ask yourself, what if? What if I change it? What happens? A lot of times it's nothing that's too destructive or problematic. And sometimes it just tears the whole entire thing up. I don't know, but it just depends on what you're doing. Now, coupled with the blend modes, right next to it, you have the opacity. Opacity is transparency. They just have to call it alpha transparency. So they just called it opacity and just left it at that. With the opacity, you have the ability to hit this little drop down and move this little slider left and right, and you will be able to change the opacity of that color of that layer. So you could take whatever blend mode effect and everything else that you've done and lighten the effect up so it's not as harshly applied by just simply changing the opacity. Now, besides hitting that drop down and moving that slider, you can also hover over this label that says opacity, and your cursor changes to this little finger, this little hand pointing at the name with little arrows that allows you to do what's called scrubbing, which means you can click and drag that value up and down from 0 to 100%. This way, instead of looking at the exact number, you're just kind of just moving the slider until you get it to what you want it to be. That's just another way of doing it. You can also click on the name of that label. It highlights, well, most of the times. Oh yeah, I forgot. Sometimes they do something good and then they mess it up by doing something goofy. It used to be able, when you click on the label next to where you could put a number in, it would highlight that number. So that way you can just retype the new number in, whatever that value is, and then just hit enter to lock that number in. Now it just puts that cursor blinking there. So if you type in a new value, it's gonna either not do anything like right now because the two numbers are there. So I got to delete it. Jesus, I deleted too much. You would have to delete the value that's there and then put in your new value, whatever it may be. So depending on how you like to operate, you may or may not like to do the highlight the number thing and change the number value that way, because then you have to hit enter after you put in the number. You might want to do the little scrubber or hit the little drop down arrow to choose the slider. Another thing that happens, which I find kind of fun, because it's a keyboard shortcut, but you got to be specific. If you are using the move tool. So that's this cross made of arrows, the very first button in this 2-column layout here. If you have that as your tool that you're using at the time, when you hit that, when you use the keyboard to type in a number, you'll get that percentage. So if I hit like just a single number, I'll get that percentage times 10. So it'll be, if I hit a 6, I get 60%. 3, I get 30%. But if I do 3, 3, then I'll get 33%. If I do 9, 8, I'll get 98%. If I hit the number 0 once, I'll get 100%. If I hit the 1, then I'll get 10%. If I do 0, 1, that's when I get 1%. Weird. But if I do 1, 0, I'll get 10%. So it's either hit the number 1 or do 1, 0. It's weird, but that's just how it works within this. So that's one of those keyboard shortcuts you may use, you may not use. Depends on what you're doing, really, if you utilize that particular bit of it. So opacity, blend mode, you have the ability to set those up how you need to get it to apply to that layer. And again, when you apply it to the layer, it affects every layer underneath because it blends all the colors together. And you get some very cool and weird things at the same time. Okay. I think that's it when it comes to this. Let me throw this layer away. Don't need that one. Okay, I got all that. All right, so now let's talk about bringing one file into another. So if I have a file like this, and I want to bring another file into this file, there's multiple ways, of course, in which to do it. Because again, it's a simple thing. It's just a matter of which way that you decide to adhere onto. One way, if I go to my file menu, you're going to see these commands called place. There's actually two of them. One's called place embedded. The other one's called place linked. Now, which one to choose, which one to use. It's up to you. I like doing the place embedded. We'll talk about the difference between them here. What this does, the place command, you're going to see in a bunch of different Adobe programs. It's their import feature. So when I want to import in text, a picture, a file of any type, and I want to import it into this file that I'm working on right now, I would do the place command. Now, when you do place linked, the linked aspect, any of you that use InDesign, you've been doing the place linked the whole time. You would link to that file, wherever that file is, and a copy of what you got linked will show up in this file. You don't really see a big difference on what happens using place linked or place embedded, but I just want to show you what happens here. So if I do that's the Austin Vineyard. If I do this red wine file here, and I do in place linked, right? What ends up happening is you'll get the file brought in. Usually it's going to be brought in at its full size, which means if it's smaller than the picture you're bringing it into, it's going to be kind of tiny, or it'll fit the whole picture in. If the picture is bigger than what you're bringing it into, then the picture will scale itself down proportional to fit into the size of the picture that you're bringing it into. So it'll scale itself down. It never scales up, it only scales down. Now, when you do place linked, every time you do the place command, what's going to happen is you're going to get these little handles on the corners and the sides with this X here. These are your transformation options. If you look up in the options bar, you will have an X and a Y coordinate, which is basically where this thing is located from its center. You'll have a W and H value, which is the width and height of this image that you're placing in. And then you'll have a rotation angle, which is this little pie piece there. So this way you can place this and have it transform by scaling it, rotating it, and positioning it before you confirm that that's what you want to do, or confirm that the final placement. Now, again, everybody's different. There's multiple ways of making this happen. These transform options, you can use your mouse to do this as well. If you move your mouse outside of your image that you're placing in, your cursor changes to this bent double arrow, so I can rotate this guy around to whatever rotation angle I want. As I'm rotating, if I hold down the shift key, I'll be constrained to certain angles. I think it's like 15-degree increments or 10-degree increments that it's rotating around by. So I can try to rotate it based on, trying to get it straight or what have you. If I go to one of the corner handles and click and drag, that's changing the width and the height. Now, if you look up at the top in the options bar, between the width and height is this little chain link that right now is activated. So that means if I change the width, the height's going to change proportional. So if I grab this little corner handle and resize, it gets bigger and smaller and proportional. If I grab one of these side handles, though, all right, it's doing it too. It's scaling it proportional. Sometimes it doesn't do that. It just depends on the version of Photoshop you're in. If you go up here in the options bar and click on that chain link to turn that off, now if I go to the corner or go to the sides, everything disproportionately stretches. So it doesn't stay proportional. If you go back and turn that chain link on, you'll be kind of stuck now with this new disproportionate size. And you can't really, well, you can get it back, but it just requires you to do some steps. What you would have to do is go back to turn the chain link off and then go to the width and height number. Remember, I told you you can use the scrubber. So you could scrub the value up and down, or you can highlight the number that's there, type in a new number. So if I type 100% for the width and then go to the height, type that in at 100%. Now it goes back to the original size, and then I can click on the chain link to kind of lock those two back in. Now I can do that proportional scale again. So it'll allow me to do that. The rotation angle, it puts the rotation up here in the options bar. Again, if I want to reset that, I can just hit 0, and that changes the rotation back to its original point, the original standpoint. So I do these transformations, get this thing to the size I want, get it put where I want it to go. Then up in the options bar, I got a check mark up here for placing it and completing the place in the transformation, and a little no symbol to cancel and let me do the place all over again. So I'm going to hit the check mark to place this in. Now that the little control handles and the big X has gone away on the picture, and now I have my layer. And so you got red wine, that's the name of the file, so that's the name of the layer. The icon, there's a little, the thumbnail, there's a little icon in the lower right hand corner to let you know that this is a linked file. Now, what does the linked file thing come into play? When you do place linked, the original file is still where it is, the data of it. What you're looking at is what they call a proxy image. It is not the original image data. It is a copy that is sitting here waiting for you to do whatever to it. You can do whatever you want here in the Photoshop file. But if you go back to the original file where it was located, do something new to that, it'll update this one. All right, so that's useful for those of you going back and forth between Illustrator and Photoshop. You'll see that a lot. You have a logo that you made in Illustrator. Now you want to wrap that logo, say, on a t-shirt or something. So you can link that logo in, put it on a t-shirt, and have it look like the t-shirt was printed with that logo on it, with a little bit of stuff that you do here in Photoshop. But then you can go over to Illustrator. Let's say the colors need to change, the shaping needs to change, or whatever. You can go back to that logo in Illustrator, change it, and you'll see the changes update over here in Photoshop, the next time you open that file. So it's a back and forth kind of thing. They call it round robin at one point in time, and it's just a synchronization thing that they do. Now, going back to file, going to this place embedded, choosing that option instead of linked. What does that do? What's the difference? Well, same file, red wine, do the place on that. It comes in the same way, small and tiny because that's the original size of it. I can scale it and rotate it and all the same things that I did before, with this, like I did before with the place linked file here. But with the embedded file, here's the difference. When I do place embedded, I have the same transformation options and such. When I click on this little check mark here, the difference comes in the layer, in the little thumbnail that sits there. The little thumbnail looks different. In the thumbnail, the little icon in the lower corner looks different now. This is an embedded file with this second red wine image, the bigger one that I got here. Now what's happened? Well, now the data that makes this picture up has been embedded into this Photoshop file. So for the linked file, if I move this Photoshop file off of my computer, say to another computer, I'm going to get a message when I open it up that says, "Hey, where is this original red wine file? It was linked over here in this computer at this location. Can you relocate it for me because they're not linked anymore? The link has been disconnected because it's on a completely different computer." And the new computer has no idea how to find that file. The embedded file, when you do place embedded, it embeds all that data information, so you'll never get that broken link command. You'll never get that message that will pop up. So you'll always have it connected. You won't have to worry about it missing any data because the proxy image is already embedded in. So that's the difference between the two. Which one's better? That's a matter of opinion. I like doing the place embedded here to Photoshop because that's what the place command always did. And then they added that embedded and linked concept when Illustrator and InDesign had their place commands being the linked version. And that's what theirs is by default. So that's the main difference. You don't really get much of a change. It's just a matter of this one's embedded, so it's part of the Photoshop file overall. So I can just take the one file and move it to another computer and don't have to worry about things where the link is broken. Whereas place linked, if everything's going to be in the same one folder or whatever, then you transfer that folder to another location. Well, the linked files are still there because it's in that folder. It's how you work, your own workflow. And it's just choices. So the place command allows you to place in a picture into another file. So that's one way to make that happen. Let me get rid of these two pictures. Oh, something that I did not bring up, I forgot, and I want to tell it to you right now. Move tool, before I delete these things. There is an option in the options bar for the move tool of auto select. And with auto select, there's a drop down here that says group or layer. When you have that on, look at my layers palette. When I click on one of these pictures, it highlights and changes the selection of that layer to that particular layer I click onto. Why is that important? Well, it's just a matter of keeping you from having to move your cursor over here to click on this layer in order to be able to do something to that information. You can just use the move tool to click on it, and then you can drag it around to wherever you want it to do to like kind of reposition it or something like that. If you need to do that, if you need to apply a filter right now, you got the layer selected, so now you can apply a filter. You can go here to your edit menu that will have the transformation options in here under edit. Free transform is what I like to use, but you also got the regular transform and everything like that to be able to scale, rotate, skew, and all that sort of thing with your object. When you choose free something like free transform, it just puts those transform options back on, so it brings those resize handles and such back with the same options there in the options bar, plus a couple of others. And you can also, with the free transform, right click and change the transformation to one of these other options here to kind of get things going to what you need. And then when you finish, you hit the check mark to apply the transformation. So what I was doing is I clicked onto a layer and I can hit delete. Click on another thing, then delete it. You know, it's just quick and fast things. I will do things like that, and hopefully I catch myself if I don't talk about it. If I do something and I don't talk about it, shoot me an email or whatever. Be like, hey, what in the heck did you just do? At this particular point, you did something and I didn't see what it was. Tell me about it, and I'll try to remember and let you know. All right. Another way to bring something into another file. I want to open that red wine file. I'm going to go File to Open, and I'm going to open up red wine, that JPEG file. So it's a separate file opened up, here. Now, copy paste. Some people swear by copy paste a lot, and it's cool. Problem is, if you got a slow computer, you're going to slow it down even more because if I did something like edit and is it edit and select all? Oh, it's not here. Okay. Well, if I do the keyboard shortcut Control A, I thought it was under edit, but like select all was under the edit menu. I didn't see it there, so maybe it was never there, and I just don't remember. But once you have the whole layer selected, you can go to edit, and you'll have like your cut, copy, paste commands there. All right, so when you cut or copy something, it goes to your clipboard. Your clipboard is a part of your RAM. The RAM is the part of the computer that's the short-term memory to make all your processes happen. So everything that the computer needs to do to process things, whether it be going to a website or processing what you're doing here in Photoshop or whatever, it needs the RAM in which to do it. Photoshop is already going to take about 70% of what's available at the time that you open the program or open a file to do its processes. That's a lot. If you start cutting and copying things, especially big, huge pictures, that stuff sits up in the RAM and it never goes away until you restart the computer. That's why it's always a good idea that when you walk away from your computer for 15 minutes or more, like going on a lunch break or whatever, just restart the computer, save everything, shut programs down, restart the computer, let it free up that system memory, so the computer doesn't have it doesn't crash on you or have a heart attack or whatever in the middle of something that you're doing. So I never want to do that cut, copy, paste if I can avoid it. So one way to avoid it, if you remember, I told you about right clicking onto a layer and you can go to duplicate the layer. Here's another fun part that's in here. When you duplicate the layer, whatever name that you want to give it, let's say I call it red wine again. Before you hit OK, you'll see destination and you'll see document. What this does is that when you hit that drop down, it gives you a list of all the open files. So any file that you got open shows it to you by name. This would be the Austin Vineyard. That's where I wanted to go to. You also have the option to make a whole new document out of this. Now, what this does is that it makes the duplicate over in that file, not in this one. So when I hit OK, nothing happens here in this file. But if I go to the red one, if I go to the Austin Vineyard file, see, it brings the picture in. Now, this way, notice that this picture is much bigger than it was when I did the place, right? When we did the place command, I told you that it brings the picture in full size. That's what it's supposed to do. But the thing I noticed when I did this one day, and then I did the place command and I brought a picture in, and then I did this duplicate layer situation that I just did and brought the picture in two different sizes. What's going on? When I do the duplicate layer, it's exactly duplicating the layer. So it's bringing it in at its exact full size. When I did that place command, it chooses what the full size is going to be. And it chooses it based on a couple of factors. One factor, if I go here to image and image size, I'm looking at this image here. It's this width and height in pixels. It's this resolution of 72, right? If I go to red wine, let's look at that. Image size. It's got this width and height, but see the resolution? It's smaller in physical size, but the resolution is much higher, 300. Now, the resolution matters. Something that's a high resolution image going into a file that's a lower resolution, it's going to bring that image in at its full size, because 300 pixels is bigger than 72. So that 300 pixel image takes up a whole lot more space than the 72 pixel image does. So it scales it down to a relatively proportional size based on the resolution. It's matching the resolution. So it took that 300 pixel uh, image, that 300 pixel resolution image, brought it into the 72 pixel image, resolution image, matched the resolution so it matched the size. So it scaled it down to fit better in the size. The place command doesn't necessarily do that. Do I like using the place command? Yes, but I do like using this duplicate layer better because to me it's just faster than doing file, place, find the picture, transforming it, scaling it up, and getting it to size and that sort of thing. I'd rather open the file, right click on the layer, duplicate the layer, change the name, choose the destination. I'm done with that file. I can close it up, and I can start working with whatever I got here next. Again, is it better? For me, yes. For you, maybe not. It's just a matter of what you prefer. The transformation part of it, I'll just do the keyboard shortcut Control T or Command T for the free transform. And now I can freely transform this to make it, bigger. and whatever angle I'm looking for it to be at, rotational angle and such. So I can do all the things that I was able to do before, you know, right there. And for me, that works just as fast as anything else. Again, not necessarily better, it's just a different way of doing it. Okay, moving on here. So you can do that duplicate layer, choose a new destination to move files. That's one way to do it. Copy and paste would work just as easily because you'd be able to copy it and paste it over at its original thing. But I don't like doing copy and paste because that duplicate layer bypasses the whole cut, copy, paste concept and doesn't add on to the RAM and weighing the computer down from, processing, which is probably what's wrong with my computer. It's probably got been on too long and doing too many things. Next thing I want to show you here. We got like 15 minutes. I want to show you what happens to all this white background here on this picture. So I have this white background. I want to get rid of it. How can I get rid of it? Well, you could do the layer masking. I'm going to show you that after this. But there's another option. It's a little more complex, but it's kind of fun because it goes into these blend modes. So I have these different blending modes like normal and all these other ones. And I got these ones that make things darker that what it does is that it takes things like white and going into shades of gray, drops it completely out. So darken versus multiply versus, color, linear burn, darker color. I got these here and they all tend to work pretty good. They look pretty good. But the problem that you run into has to deal with the glass that holds this wine because the wine looks all right, but sometimes it looks a little too artificial. Like I can pick multiply and that looks kind of good. Problem is I lose a lot of the detail of the glass. Like it's hard to see that, where the glass begins and ends with the background. And the wine is kind of see-through more than I probably prefer it to be. So can I fix that? And that white background is technically still there. So if you did anything, you know, towards like a filter or whatever, let me kind of show you real quick. Instead of talking about it, let me show you something. Well, I wouldn't do that filter. Well, yeah, I'll do this filter. Let's go to filter. Let's go to one that works quickly. Let's do this goofy flame one here. Oh, I forgot. Flame does, you have to write a path. For it, let's do fibers. I know that will show up. So fibers allows me to create this kind of fibrous material. It's good for creating something like looks like, wood grain or something like that. So when I apply it, see what happens? It's applied to the entire layer because that whole layer is still there. Just because I knocked out that white background with this multiply blend mode doesn't mean the rest of the information is not still there. All right. So it's still there. It's just hidden right now. It's just kind of temporarily being hidden. There is another way of doing this. If I double click onto either the thumbnail of the layer or somewhere outside of the name of the layer, I'm going to open up this little layer style little panel. It's basically the properties of this layer just kind of listed out. It's, I got the blend mode here. I got the opacity here. There's this thing called advanced blending that we can go after in a different class. But there's also this blend if option that I want to bring your attention to right now. What does this thing do? Blend if will allow you to take this current layer, which is the red wine layer, and the layer that's directly below it, any layers that are underlying or below it, and blend them together based on a brightness level. So what you're seeing with these little two little ramps of color here is going from the darkest color to the lightest color. So all the way to the left is the darkest color in this layer. All the way to the right is the lightest color in this layer. So this is kind of fun to play with, but it is a toy. It's a tool to play with to kind of see what can happen. When you have a picture like this, product shots, a lot of times you get this, and you want to knock out the one color that's the background. Usually it's white or it could be black or something like that. You could have it with this blend if, take the current layer and move this little this light slider. And as I move it over, I'm doing it slow. You see what's happening? It's knocking that white background out of there. All right. It's taking it away. Now, it's taking it away kind of harshly, but right now I can still see the glass. That's the main thing. I can still see the glass because that white background is not completely going away. If I go too far, then it starts eating into the color of the wine and starts going way too far with this. But there's one other thing that's kind of fun to play with, and that is once I get this to a particular point, say like here, I don't know if you can notice this, but you'll notice it, on the sliders here. There's this little line going down the middle of the sliders. If you hold down your Alt key or your Option key on your keyboard, you could take that slider and split it in half. And then once you split it in half, you could take one half and move it in one position on that line, and then the other half on another position on that line. And if you play with it well enough, you can get the color that you knocked out kind of blending back a little bit. And then what happens is that you can get the other half and move it a little bit further than you probably normally would. But now you get a different kind of blending effect. So besides just the blend mode, or in combination with the blending mode that you can pick from, you got this little blend if option here that you could choose as well. So no one tool that I ever show you works by itself. You always got to have it combined with something else. So besides this blend if effect, which knocks out a lot of that white background, but I could still bring some of it back if I wanted to and kind of, fade it away so I could still see like the edge of the glass. Because that's what I'm aiming at trying to do. Trying to get, find a particular balance point where I can still get the edging of the glass there still being seen. And I'll use that. But then I can also play with the blending mode, and probably use maybe darken or multiply, or even, well, the overlays and stuff are not really going to work. Well, nah, it's way too see-through. Well, linear light's kind of interesting. Makes it look kind of artificial there, but uh yeah, the darken kind of works kind of cool with this same effect. And so you can play with the options and still play with this blend if with that split like that. So again, it's just holding down your Alt key or your Option key, and then you can split that one slider into two separate halves. You can do it with the other side too, with the darker color, but that's not what I want to knock out. I could see that if I move that darker one, that it's taking the wine color away, and that's not what I really want to do. If I do the lighter one on the underlying layer, then kind of everything starts getting knocked out. So usually you're affecting one side of the slider is going to work better than the other. But this is a cool little blending effect that you can play with the blend mode and play with this blend if option here as well in combination to get something that probably looks a little bit better, a little more realistic, a little more to what you're trying to do. And it doesn't look so artificial and Photoshoppy, as some people tend to want to call it. So now this glass of wine looks like that when this glass of wine was being poured into this, the wine is being poured into the glass, this Austrian vineyard picture was behind it at the time. And of course, it never was, but this is kind of given that illusion of that. So it's just a matter of what you like. I kind of like it without the blend mode because I'm noticing that, like, with that dark and blend mode, some of the vines here in the front, in that front row of the vine, see, it's kind of coming through the wine a little bit more than I want it to be. And there's ways to kind of get around that too. We're not at that point, so we're not going to talk about it right now. That goes into a lot of, kind of retouching of things. We may visit that with this file again, but really don't want to get into that just yet. All right. I'm going to stop right here to just give a little bit of a break. I'm going to come back and in a different video, so part two, I'm going to show you layer masking next. So basically being able to create a layer mask manually instead of using select and mask all the time. Can you create kind of a blended layer mask by painting directly on it with your brush tools and get, some different blended effects going on. And then we're going to be going into a project that I'm going to that I'm going to show you what I do for this project file here, and you'll have the files to be able to play with as well to see what you can create.